What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to today's edition of All Elite Review, where today we are going to be reviewing the show from this past Wednesday, which was the 3rd, I believe. Double check. Yes, it was the 3rd. June the 3rd, 2020. Studio show, of course, where we had 2 championship matches on this show, including a tag team championship match, which we had not seen since Revolution, because, you know, with the whole COVID-19 shit that's still going on, and of course with everything else going on too, you know, with all the riots and shit that are going on. Hopefully it'll come to a peaceful end at some point. But let's go ahead and get into this review and rush through it. So I think there were like 5 matches on the docket. Yep. Yeah, the AEW tag team titles on the line, and the first defense of the AEW TNT Championship. The first of many that we're going to be seeing over the next couple weeks. You had the Omega Cowboys, who of course are still the tag team champions, against the newly christened Superbad squad of Jimmy Havoc and Superbad Kip Sabian, who was the number 4 ranked team at the time, but earned a shot at the Omega Cowboys. And the winner of this match obviously would be the tag team champions, and would face the Best Friends at Fyter Fest, which they actually gave us some details about that, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But highlights of this match: Havoc hit a falling flapjack counter on Omega. At first I thought it was a botch, but I rewound the footage and watched it a little closely, and it looked like Havoc actually grabbed Omega's leg when Omega went up to do the split-legged leap like we see a lot, but Havoc countered that. So I thought it was a botch at first, but it was not. It was actually a nice counter. Omega hits a spiral suplex on Havoc. Page with a roaring lariat on Havoc, and then both members of the Omega Cowboys had like a standing fall-away slam on Sabian, where they basically just tossed him overhead. Penelope Ford tried to hit a flying Frankensteiner on Hangman, but blocks it, and was kind of holding her in place, and Rick Knox kind of looks at him, and it's like, what the heck happened here? And Hangman Page was like, what do I do? Because he didn't know what to do. And Rick Knox is like, just drop her, and he's like, okay. And then Rick Knox throws her out of the match because she interfered, basically, or tried to interfere in this case. And Havoc uses the distraction to hit Hangman and Omega with a ring wrench, but only gets a 2 count. Sabian hits a Galmanguri on Page and a penalty kick on Page. Pump kick on Omega. Omega hits Frankensteiners on both of the Superbad squad. Omega hits a Singapore roll on Havoc, and then hits a hanging lung blower on Sabian, who had placed in a seeing position on the middle turnbuckle. Only got 2 count though. The Omega Cowboys hit their big boot Qatar Crusher running shooting star press on Sabian for a 2 count, which is something that they've been known to do. Hangman hits a lariat on Havoc, a follow-away slam on Sabian, and then a Pescado on Havoc, and then he hits a roaring lariat on Sabian for a 2 count. Sabian hits Omega with a tornado DDT. Havoc hits his running Death Valley driver on Omega into Page in the corner, which looked really nice. Sabian with a coup de grace on Omega. And one thing I noticed about Havoc and Sabian was the constant tagging in and out. And it's like, these two basically came together, earlier this year, but they're showing all the fundamentals of a great tag team, And of course now they call themselves the Superbad Squad, so they have an official tag team name. Havoc hits his Cradle Impaler DDT finisher on Omega, but only gets a 2 count before Page breaks it up. Superbad Squad had a PK dropkick combo on Page. Sabian hits a springboard dropkick and then a poison Frankensteiner on Omega. But Omega comes back and hits a Snapdragon suplex on Havoc and then a V-trigger on Sabian. And then both the Omega Cowboys hit their discus elbow, push-up, German suplex combo on Havoc. Then the Omega Cowboys hit a pop-up powerbomb from Page. And then a Kamagoye on Sabian. And then they actually have a finisher name for their combination V-trigger buckshot lariat. They call it the Last Call. And they hit it on Havoc and get the 3 count and the victory. Nice solid opening match. It would have been fire if there was a crowd. This would have been easily 4.5 stars if there was a crowd. But as it stands, it was still a good solid match. A good solid opening match, and I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. And then we learned that Fyter Fest will be a two show affair. It'll actually be held in back-to-back weeks on July the 1st for night 1 and then July the 8th for night 2. So we're going to have 2 special episodes of AEW Dynamite with Fyter Fest. So that'll be interesting to see. And all the championships are going to be on the line in those 2 nights. So that'll be cool. And then of course we get a Brian Cage squash match. This time he squashed the captain, Sean Dean, who, like Lee Johnson, is basically a jobber to the stars. It was all Cage in this one. Hit his arm trap, belly to belly suplex, a pump handle driver, an outside in suplex, a buckle bomb, and then his drill claw for the 3 count and the victory. Of course, they're trying to make him look really strong. I would give him some more quality opponents though, and not just these jobbers, you know, give him a little bit more legitimacy. But I gave it 1.5 stars out of 5, which is the typical squash match rating. Taz basically says, then gets on the microphone and basically says that Cage will take Moxley's head off at Fyter Fest, and took exception to Moxley kind of chuckling, you know, when he was on commentary the previous week. Then Moxley comes out and says that the reason why he was chuckling is because he knows what Cage is capable of, and he wants Cage to bring, you know, that intensity, that fire, because that's what he lives for. And he also basically said that he will not be intimidated by Cage, and he basically told both Taz and Cage to not waste their time as well as his trying to intimidate him. So there's that. And then you have Lance Archer beating the shit out of someone in some, you know, random area. And Jake the Snake Roberts kind of had this shock look on his face, like, man, he's lost complete control of Archer at this point. And then Matt Hardy meets up with a Private Party at a bar, and they basically have a friendly discussion. And then we got our next match, which was Colt Cabana against Chris Jericho. Interestingly enough, these two had never faced each other in their entire careers, even on the indies or anywhere else. So this was interesting. Highlights of this match: Colt Cabana hit a Sa'i moonsault to the outside. Looks like he got hit in the teeth at some point because his teeth was bleeding. And of course, Jake Hager gets involved because, of course, tired of that shit. He runs Colt into the turnbuckle, go to a commercial break. Jericho hits a running back elbow, gets a 2 count. Colt counters Y2J's Bulldog by sending him crush first into the corner. Hits a biotic elbow, a flying apple, and then a flying splash for the 2 count. Jericho counters the Superman into the Lion's Hammer. A very nice counter there. Colt hits a head scissors takedown and an avalanche Frankensteiner, only gets a 2 count. But then Jericho hits the Judas Effect out of nowhere and gets the 3 count for the win. I gave this match 2.5 stars out of 5. Then Jericho grabs a mic and calls Mike Tyson a piece of shit and wants Mike Tyson right now. Then Orange Cassidy comes down and faces down Jericho and Hager. Basically, he takes Jericho's hands and puts them into his like belt loops that are right there, and then he takes his own hands and puts them in his pockets. You know, kind of like, yeah. But then he dodges Jericho's attack and then Hager's attack and basically rolls out of the ring where the best friends were waiting, which led into basically a trios match being booked for the next show between the Inner Circle, which in this case is Hager and Proud and Powerful, against the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. So that'll be interesting. And then we get Britt Baker rehab montage where she's in a wheelchair and doing all these like rehab exercises and shit. And it's like, yeah, even though she's legit injured and won't be back until All Out, they're still finding ways to keep her on the show as as basically the top heel of the women's division. So I think that's cool. Then our next match was a women's match between Big Swole and Nyla Rose. And again, basically the big problem here, and here's something that I've been seeing lately. We've only been seeing 1 or 2 matches in the women's division between Dark and Dynamite. AEW, seriously, you need to start showcasing your women's division more. Okay, I mean, not even the WWE is doing the 1 match a week bullshit anymore. You know? They've outgrown that shit. So, what's the problem? I don't understand it. You know, especially when you have a super top-heavy division like the women's division. I mean, right now you really only have 4 big stars, one of which can't get to the States right now because of the whole COVID-19 shit, and one of which is injured right now. So really, the only 2 stars that you have are Hikaru Shida and Nyla Rose. I mean, and when you look at win-loss records, and when you look at my personal rankings, you can see just how top-heavy the division is. You know, Chris Statlander's nowhere near the top of the 4 that I've spoke of. Big Swole's not, and then, you know, she had to face Nyla Rose in this match, and that didn't go well for her in terms of wins and losses. So there's that. So they really need to do something to really start showcasing this women's division a little bit more. You know, and we need to see it a lot more than just 1 or 2 matches a week, because that's fucking ridiculous. Rant over. So highlights of this match: Swole hit an abdominal stretch on Nyla Rose, but they try to trade hip tosses, but Nyla hits the hip toss. We're going to commercial break. Nyla hits a backbreaker. Swole blocks a big splash, hits a nice roundhouse kick and a headbutt, and her springboard cutter for a 2 count. Hits a pump kick for a 2 count. Hits a knee strike to the back of Rose's head, but Rose comes back with a spear. Swole counters the beast bomb into a sunset flip for a 2 count. Tries to go for her dirty dancing finisher, but Rose counters it into kind of a modified beast bomb, which was more like a sit-out spine buster, and gets the 3 count and the victory. So I gave it 2.5 stars out of 5. Swole is interviewed afterwards, but Baker interrupts and basically talks shit. She's on a golf cart, basically in her wheelchair on a golf cart, and tells the driver to, you know, back up to the fence, and basically starts talking shit to Swole. In which case Swole gets a chair, and that's when Baker tells the driver to get out of there, go, go, go. And then we see Tony Schiavone interviews Darby Allin backstage, and Allin basically says he'll get the last laugh on Taz and Cage. Then Tony Schiavone sits down with FTR, the Revolts, and basically talks to them about, you know, why they've come to AEW, and basically it's because, well, you know, it's the hottest division in the world right now, and they basically, you know, run through the list of all the tag teams they would want to face, and of course, you know, they're right at the top of the list, you know, is winning the tag team championship, which, you know, of course. And they tried to downplay, you know, the whole Young Bucks thing, which I think is smart, because that's the type of thing that really needs to take place in front of a crowd, because, you know, that's a rivalry that's been building and building and building for years, and it's finally going to come to fruition here in All Elite Wrestling. And then Butcher and the Blade bust in and confront FTR, and then Colt Cabana gets interviewed backstage, and Brody Lee comes in, and Colt Cabana was basically talking about, you know, how he can't seem to, you know, he's been winning matches but is not able to win the big match. And Brody Lee comes in and basically tries to recruit Colt Cabana, so he's still in that recruiting mode. But next show, this coming Wednesday, it will be FTR in their AEW debut against the Butcher and the Blade. So there's that. So that'll be interesting to watch. I think it's pretty obvious that FTR is going over. And then we have the main event, the AEW TNT Championship between Jungle Boy and the American Nightmare, Cody. Cody basically wants to try to make this a prestigious championship, and of course defending it every week, I think could help with that, especially when you're up against like legit opponents like Jungle Boy, who won the Battle Royal the previous week. And next week, apparently Mark Quinn is going to challenge Cody for the championship. And you're like, but Mark Quinn has not been in a singles match this entire year. True. But if you listen to what Cody said the previous week, he said, this is an open challenge. And in pro wrestling, when a champion declares that there is an open challenge, it means regardless of record and regardless of ranking, you can challenge for the TNT Championship, because Cody basically let it be known it's an open challenge. So, you know, basically ranking and record can be pushed to the side in this case, because, you know, it's still going to be important, but, you know, a wrestler can challenge for a championship if A, they manage to get a pinfall over the champion in a non-title match, like in a tag team setting. Case in point, Scorpio Sky, when he pinned Chris Jericho, and of course he was actually defending the tag team championship with Frankie Kazarian at that point, in which case Jericho and Guevara were challenging for the tag titles, and Scorpio Sky got the pinfall over him, which allowed him to get a championship match against Jericho when he was the AEW World Champion. And another case in point would be if the champion issues a direct challenge to a particular wrestler. Like, say, for instance, when, you know, Brody Lee, you know, he basically wanted a title match, and John Moxley said, come at me, bro, you know, so there's that. And in this case, Cody said it was an open challenge, so that's why Mark Quinn is basically stepping up to the plate, because it's like, how often are you going to get an opportunity like that? So it'd be interesting to see what Mark Quinn does in singles competition. But anywho, highlights of this match. I think this was definitely the highlight of the show. Cody with a headlock takeover. Jungle Boy hits a Frankensteiner into like pinning combos. Cody hits a power slam, gets a 2 count, locks in the figure 4 leg lock. Jungle Boy with a springboard tornado DDT gets a 2 count, and he hits a tope suicida. They go to the outside. Cody hits a nice headbutt. Tries to go for a second one, but Jungle Boy ducks out of the way and hits the stage, basically busting himself open, basically, you know, blading, of course, adding a bit of color to the proceedings. During this whole time, Jungle Boy is basically jawing with MJF, who's basically like, you think you deserve a championship match before me? Well, he did win the Battle Royal, MJF, you know what I mean? So, yeah, those two are still going at each other. They go back into the ring. Jungle Boy hits nice pin combos. Cody with a pump kick. Jungle Boy hits his rebound lariat, only gets a 2 count. Cody with a nice drop kick, and then a stalling superplex for a 2 count. Both go up to the top turnbuckle, and we're battling on the top turnbuckle, but then fall through the table that was set up on the outside. They both pop back up, do a couple more like wrestling counters and shit, before Cody hits a vicious looking crossroads for the 3 count and the victory, and retains the TNT Championship over Jungle Boy. So it will be Cody going up against Mark Quinn, which I think that was obvious, next week on Dynamite. I gave this match 3.5 stars out of 5. As for my overall rating, another, you know, easy to watch show. It was easy to get into, and of course still advancing, you know, some storylines forward. I'm going to give this show a solid 6.5 out of 10. I can give it another thumbs up show. And then we have this coming Wednesday. Jericho's apparently going to be back on commentary, so that'll be interesting. I thought he was pretty funny on commentary last time he was on there, you know, for all them tapings when they were at the Nightmare Factory. So as we will rush towards Fyter Fest at the beginning of July. So that's going to do it for this edition of All Elite Review. Thank you very much for watching. Here are my personal updated rankings. And until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. See you later.
You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.